Michelle Lally never expected a latte to change her year. The Pasadena morning was bright enough to sting. The kind of clean light that makes you think anything could start over if you step into it with enough courage. She pushed open the glass door with one hand and guided Isabella with the other, humming along to whatever tune the 5-year-old had been singing in the car. The plan was simple. Vanilla, oat milk, one deep breath, and a quiet table in the corner before day turned noisy. Then he turned toward her, and the quiet plan evaporated. Like steam above the espresso machine, he was taller than the counter and somehow calmer than the room. 6'2", crisp jacket, a smile that looked lived in instead of practiced. Aaron Nosler. He didn't say hi to Michelle first, crouched to Isabella's height, asked her name like it mattered, and made her giggle with a line about her backpack being hero-sized. Michelle felt her shoulders loosen in a way that surprised her. No cameras, no crew, just a stranger being kind to her child. It was ordinary. It was everything. What she couldn't know was that this tiny spark would become public property, a storyline the internet would pick apart frame by frame until even the coffee order felt like a clue. Before Aaron, Michelle's life lived in two versions, the one the world watched and the one she tried to protect. On Bravo's The Valley, she and Jesse Lay were the glossy couple the franchise loves. Perfect life, careful toasts, the events with guest lists that read like press releases. The camera loved them, but the camera also told on them. And still quote the silent anniversary dinner. Then, the toast to personal growth that sounded like a verdict. The smile that didn't reach Jesse's eyes. There were smaller moments too, the ones that slipped through editing because they were too undeniable to ignore. An exhale that wasn't relief. A laugh that came a beat late. A glance that said, "Not now, please." Camera. It was sharper. And closer and far less cinematic. You can stage a party. You can't stage peace. When the separation finally went public, the response was a chorus of "we knew" and "we're sad" and "maybe she can breathe now." Michelle thought she might step away, at least for a while. But Bravo doesn't reward quiet, and the truth is, quiet is hard to keep when people are used to hearing your life through a microphone. She didn't plan to meet anyone. She planned to heal. The coffee shop had other ideas. Early on, Aaron drifted into scenes like he was walking in from real life instead of a casting call. He carried bags. He asked if she'd eaten. He took the far end of the couch and let Michelle take the light. Production didn't have to manufacture chemistry. It was already there in the small, useful ways. Isabella reaching for his hand at the curb, him learning which cereal she liked without being told twice. Fan accounts noticed first. Edits landed on Instagram with dreamy music and captions that said, "Fresh start," and "let her be happy." It felt different. It felt deserved. And that's when the story learned to sprint. The accusation arrived the way true reality TV detonation always does. Casually, at a table, under ambient noise. Jesse swirled a glass and dropped it clean. Michelle and Aaron started before he'd moved his last suit out of the closet. The line was shaped like a question, but carried like a gavel. Michelle said no. Aaron said no. Aaron said no. The room held its breath. But the internet doesn't. Timelines bloomed overnight. Reddit threads with maps of sightings, time-stamped stories, blurs in windows people swore were reflections that proved everything. Fandoms split with a satisfying click. Fresh start versus Team Red Flag. Somewhere in post-production, editors pinned moments to a digital corkboard and smiled tight smiles that said, "We have an episode." If the goal was to scare the romance off camera, it failed. The next few months played like a proof of concept. Aaron grilled in backyards and learned Isabella's bike needed the seat a notch higher. He stood in group scenes like someone who didn't want a spotlight and still wound up under one. The move-in reveal hit like a confetti cannon. Playful. Bickering about mugs, boxes labeled badly on purpose, laughter that didn't sound like a scene partner had earned it. For a while there, the future felt possible. Sweet scenes hide stress cracks you only see when the light hit sideways, and a holiday was about to tilt the sun. Father's Day looked harmless. A smiling selfie, Isabella's hair messy in the way you only let it be when you feel safe. A caption that could have been nothing and somehow felt like everything. Jesse saw it, and the temperature shifted a full 10 degrees. Hawaii recorded the storm. Footage every network dreams of and dreads at the same time. Michelle crying, the kind of tears you can't tidy. Jesse's volume turning sharp. Aaron holding eye contact like a shield and refusing to flinch. It was combustible, and it pulled. And it planted a question even the most devoted fans couldn't unask. How many rounds like this can any new love survive? After that, the silence wasn't empty. It was crowded with intention. The couple photos slowed, then stopped. These from the kitchen, once a casual diary, went quiet. Public sightings drifted from frequent to rare. Then July 23rd arrived. And with it, a pattern every Bravo detective knows by heart. The unfollow, the scrub, the grid gone clean. Michelle had removed Aaron from her feed. He still followed her, one light left on in a house nobody lived in. Screenshots hit fandom accounts before lunch. Theories multiplied like mirrors. Refresh, refresh, and then the thing everyone knew was coming came true. 24 hours later, the headlines arrived. People, blogs, so officially, they grew apart. Unofficially, the whispers had edge, sources murmured. Didn't want to film more confessionals, especially the ones that insisted on dragging last season's insinuations into this season's new rooms. All felt cornered by requests to address. Dress is a gentle word. It can be a cliff. When two people can't agree on whether their truth belongs to the episodes usually win. Season 3 was already rolling, which meant this wasn't a finale, was a plot twist. The board reset itself overnight with Jesse claim. And I told you so with that soft smile that isn't soft at all. Would Aaron walk in once, drop a line that made silence louder, and leave before anyone could ask him to say it again? Would Michelle rebuild on camera or off, and how much of each would be permitted? The audience didn't just tune in, they organized. Podcasts opened with theme songs and transitioned into timeline audits. YouTube breakdowns replayed micro-expressions like they were evidence. Dean slid into fan accounts with friend's stories that may have been gospel or may have been theater. In the Bravo sphere, the truth has incredible PR. Michelle's daily life shrank on purpose. Camp drop-off. Talks where the therapist listened more than she did. She returned texts slowly, and when she posted, the captions looked like they were chosen with tweezers. Jesse, unusually, stayed quiet. For a man fluent in the well-timed asides, read less like peace and more like strategy. Maybe he was being gracious. Maybe he was saving it. Either way, the quiet throbbed like a bass line you feel before. You hear ... then came the reunion teaser. Cut like a dare. Blurred faces, bleeped words. A walk-off that felt like gravity had been turned up in the room. Aaron's name flashed and his face didn't. Editors don't do that by accident. Fans debated cameos like they were court dates. Would he show? Would Michelle speak plainly without the emotional autocorrect people use when millions are listening? Was there a single receipt, one text, one photo, one half-deleted story that could flip a year of assumptions in 8 seconds of screen time? The only honest answer: it depends which truth gets a microphone first. What made this breakup hit harder than the average Bravo split wasn't just the people involved. It was the level of access. Fans had walked into that coffee shop with them. They'd stood in the doorway of the new place while boxes slid across floors. They'd been there for the bike seat adjustment and the pancake batter on the counter. And the second Thursday where everyone was too tired to be charming. It felt earnestly human in a space that often rewards polish. That's why the unfollow felt like a door closing in a hallway the audience had been invited to explore. It wasn't just a plot change, it was a mood change. But in this universe, the end of a romance is never the end of a story. It's the start of the next one. The fandom knew it, so did the network. Privately and carefully did Michelle Her next post could be a sunset or a book stack or Isabella's shoes by a pool, and it would still be read for subtext. Every caption is a Rorschach test when the audience arrives pre-inked. There's another layer to all of this that fans pretend not to know, but absolutely do. The machine confessionals aren't diaries. They're interviews with prompts that avoid the word prompt. Walk me through how you felt when isn't a request for a feeling, it's a steering wheel. Do you think it's fair that isn't a neutral question? It's a matchbook. Good producers are both honest and persuasive. Great producers are honey and gravity at once. Most casts learn the dance. Akaleta Michelle knows it by heart. Aaron didn't or wouldn't, and that difference, small as it sounds on paper, is the kind of misalignment that splits otherwise workable couples when the cameras are involved. You can survive differing tastes in furniture. It's harder to survive differing beliefs about who owns the story of your life. The receipts culture kept humming. Post with a barely visible reflection in a shop window turned into a debate about who took the photo. K-tagged location 3 minutes after a different tagged location became a timeline argument no one could possibly win. A friend liked a post and then unliked it, and screenshots preserved the like forever, as if the internet were a museum curated by people who haven't slept. The work is rigorous and often wrong, and occasionally, gloriously, right. But it's never neutral. Attention is a currency, and the bank never closes. Michelle moved. That's what you do when a room stops being a room and starts being a set to. Find a new room. Boxes labeled neatly at first, and then desperate. A pile for donate, a pile for keep, a pile for later that grows into a monument with the things that could be handed to a 5-year-old spoon. Soft blankets, a small plant that had somehow survived every draft, and every week she forgot to water it. Friends cycled through the way good friends do, for carrying. Ears for holding, mouths for reminding you that you are not what strangers on the internet think of you between push notifications. As for Jesse, people who don't know him well think that quiet is out of character. People who do know him know that quiet is a tool. He understands that a sentence delivered at the reunion, on a couch, flanked by castmates, and watched by a live audience at home, is worth 10 blurry subtweets. In June, he is not the villain he's sometimes made to be, and he is not the hero he occasionally auditions for. He is a man who knows how to land a line. That's going to matter soon. And Aaron, the tricky thing about being the outsider who never asked to be a character is that you still end up in the credits. He was not built for the confessional booth. He doesn't metabolize speculation the way veteran cast eventually learned to do. For him, the difference between being asked, "Can we talk about it?" and being told we need to talk about it is the difference between a conversation and a cage. Refusing to film wasn't a tantrum, it was a boundary. Boundaries make great television in theory and terrible television in practice. The machine prefers yes. A principled no sounds saintly on paper and stubborn on a call sheet. If this sounds bleak, that's only because we're inside the part of the story where the lights are low. There is always a sunrise scene. It usually arrives as something small that stays small on purpose. Michelle making pancakes with Isabella on a school morning and not filming it. A walk without a podcast in her ears so her brain can be loud for a while and then quiet. The group text where someone sends a photo of a puppy in sunglasses. And somehow, that's the thing that unclenches your jaw. Rarely trends. That's fine. Healing doesn't need the algorithm. Still, the show moves. The reunion airs whether you are ready or not. The couch is a stage and a trap and a therapy session that can't legally be called therapy. There will be apologies that are real and apologies that are PR, and a few that manage to be both. Will be footage no one has seen, and footage everyone has seen recontextualized so that it feels new enough to argue about again. There will be a walk-off because the teaser promised one, and the only thing worse than manufacturing drama is manufacturing disappointment. There will be a moment, maybe small, where someone says the quiet thing out loud and the room goes still in that specific way that says, "We didn't know we were waiting to hear that until we heard it after real life again," which is to say messier, kinder, slower than the episodes made it look. Will post a photo that is either a hard launch of a new era or just an afternoon that smelled like sunscreen and cut grass. It will be parsed like sure. Someone will claim they can see a man's watch band in the corner reflection of her sunglasses. Someone else will accuse that someone of needing a hobby. Both will go to work on Monday. The internet forgets nothing and forgives strangely. People are better than that. Mostly. Why did this particular romance and breakup land the way it did? Partly because we saw enough to believe. Partly because the people involved were flawed in human ways instead of cinematic ones. Partly because the show has matured into something that understands its audience, wants both sparkle and splinters. And partly because Michelle let us in just far enough to root for her without letting us live in her kitchen forever. That's a narrow hallway to walk. She walked it. Sometimes she ran it. Sometimes she slammed the door at the end and leaned on it until her breath slowed down. There's a last question the fandom keeps asking like a riddle. Would this have worked off camera? Maybe. Probably. Almost. The truth is, most relationships could work in a vacuum, and most vacuums don't pay for private school. Everyone in this story made choices that made sense at the time to the person making them. Some of those choices made for excellent television, made for excellent therapy topics later. That's not hypocrisy. That's life. The cameras don't invent the staked. So where does that leave us? Here, watching a woman rebuild in a way that might never trend again and rooting for her anyway. See if an ex-husband can resist the easy victory lap for something smarter and more complicated. Wondering if a man who didn't want to be a character will consent to a coda, paying attention to a 5-year-old's laugh, because even on Bravo, sometimes the purest thing in the frame is the only thing that matters. The coffee shop still opens every morning. The espresso still hisses. People walk in carrying tired and walk out carrying warm. If Michelle goes back there, and she will, because life insists on errands no. One will know whether she's thinking about a first hello or a last goodbye, or just the fact that Isabella likes the sprinkle cookie best if it has more blue than red. She pay, she tip well, she hold the door for the next person. Outside, the light will be too bright or exactly right, depending on the kind of day it decides to be. Somewhere, someone will open a new Reddit thread, and someone else will close the app and call a friend instead. The story will keep happening whether anyone narrates it or not. And if you're still here, waiting for the twist, here it is. There isn't one, not yet. There's just a woman who tried to start fresh, a man who tried not to become a soundbite, another man who understands the power of a sentence said into a decent microphone, and a child who keeps giggling at backpacks that look hero-sized. There's a show that will keep cutting trailers like Dares, a fandom that will keep building timelines like Bridget, and a future that will arrive one ordinary morning at a time. When the next chapter wants to be seen, it'll step into the light on its own. Till then, the rest of us can learn to let the quiet be quiet again. But don't put your phone too far away. You know how this works. The second you stop looking is the second something drops. Weeks after the headlines cooled, the receipts never did. A fan posted a photo of a street corner where two timelines supposedly collide, a florist and a fitness studio with timestamps that didn't agree with each other or with common sense. Another fan stitched together podcast quotes from supporting cast who said everything and nothing at once. Someone mapped the drive time between the coffee shop and the condo and decided no one could have made that trip in the window implied unless fate was driving like a local. It was obsessive and absurd and occasionally insightful, and it said more about the audience than the cast. People want stories that behave. Real life DOESN. Single quotes to dot production. Veterans will tell you something off the record if you ask kindly, and promise not to name names. The confessional room is not neutral. It's comfortable on purpose, intimate on purpose, set up to feel like the safest place to say the most dangerous thing. The chair is angled 10 degrees toward the lens because bodies cooperate with cameras even when mouths pretend not to. Water is offered exactly once early. So the second request can be a beat that invites the producer to say, "While we refill, can we go back to when Jesse said?" No one lies. Not really. They just pick a truth that fits the running time. The audience senses this and forgives it until they don't. There's a version of this year where Aaron stared into the lens and said, "I won't talk about that, but I'll talk about what I love." It would have been short, it would have been awkward. It might have worked. There's a version where Michelle answered every prompt with a journalist's precision and a poet's restraint and split the atom of honesty and dignity on camera. That might have worked too. The hardest thing to accept is that incompatible boundaries are not moral failures. They're misfits. And misfits can be beautiful and still refuse to hold. If reunion night follows the familiar shape, and it will. Because television is a geometry problem solved with furniture, here's the rhythm. Open with easy wins. Warm the crowd, set the stakes, slide into the soft tissue. Ask the questions that sound like concerns and feel like demands. Cue the never-before-seen clip that forces an answer no one wants to give on a couch. Let someone storm, let someone soothe, let someone surprise you by being better than the edit made them. Save one reveal for after the second break so the streaming audience can't abandon ship without finishing the ride. Roll credits on a note that suggests healing while preserving just enough heat to ignite the next season. It's not cynical, it's craft. After the couch is rolled off stage and the lighting grid hums itself back to sleep, phones light up in the darkness like constellations. Friends text variations of "proud of you," and "you survived and they did you dirty and call me when you can." The cast group chat pings with a mix of gallows humor and links to press write-ups and at least one badly cropped meme. Michelle's messages pile up and she reads them in a quiet car, the kind of rental where the dashboard glows polite blue. She doesn't cry. She also doesn't scroll all the way to the old threads, the ones with names that now live in headlines. Instead of contacts, growth is sometimes as simple as knowing which messages not to open. A week later, real life insists on itself. Someone's birthday party at a bowling alley with shoes that don't fit anyone on purpose. Emails about a bake sale where everything must be nut-free and half the offerings will still be chaos. A new neighbor who doesn't own a television and therefore asks, in sincere curiosity, "What do you do?" Michelle answers with the truth she chooses for that morning. It fits, it lands. Not every room needs the whole story to be complete. The fandom will ask, because the fandom always asks whether there's hope for a second try. It's a sweet question until it turns into a referendum. The honest answer is this: hope is not the same as a plan, and plans are not the same as consent. If two people find their way back to a quiet table where no one is filming, the internet won't know until the internet doesn't need to know. That would be the point. The opposite is also allowed. Two people can choose parallel lanes and wait. Occasionally, adults do this every day without a Chiron. If you need an ending, take this one. A Saturday morning without news. Michelle ties her shoes while Isabella narrates the weather like a meteorologist who gets paid in stickers. They walk to a farmer's market where the peaches bruise if you look at them wrong and the coffee is strong enough to correct your posture. No one asks for a selfie. Someone does compliment the shoes. A dog decides, decisively, that Isabella is his favorite person for two. On the way home, a song from last year plays on a porch radio and Michelle doesn't flinch. This rarely gets an audience, but it keeps perfect time. And if you need a beginning, use this. The coffee shop opens at 7. The barista, with the astronaut tattoo, pulls a shot like gravity is optional. The door chime counts arrivals. Some mornings, a tall man you recognize without trying will hold the door because he was raised that way. Some mornings, a different man will stand outside texting and never look up. Most mornings, no one remarkable will do anything remarkable, and somehow that will be enough. These aren't obligated to deliver a twist on your schedule. The good ones arrive like good light when the day is ready to wear them.